Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 2022 Pinellas County Hurricane Summit. I am Dr. Cynthia Johnson. I'm the Director of Pinellas County Economic Development, and I have the great pleasure of being your host this afternoon. So first, we'd like to start with a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, so we wanted to make sure that all participants were aware. And at the bottom of your screen in the center, you'll see a Q&A button. And that is the button that we want you to use to post your questions. And we will post our answers in the chat. And we will talk about the questions that you are posing along the way when we get to the Q&A at the end of the discussion. So please feel free to share. We want this to be engaging, informative, and most of all, we want it to be relevant to your recovery and preparing for that. So I have the good pleasure of introducing you to our partners who are partnering with us today to facilitate this discussion, this very important discussion. First of all, I'd like to introduce you to Joe Boris. Joe is the Response and Recovery Operations Manager for Pinellas County Emergency Management. Good afternoon, Joe.
Good afternoon, Dr. Johnson.
And next we have Mr. Steve Hayes. Steve is the president of Visit St. Petersburg. Hi, Steve.
Good afternoon, everybody.
And our partners from the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, Mr. Brian Ellis. Brian is the Disaster Recovery Coordinator for the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. Good afternoon, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, today we're going to talk about hurricane preparedness for business and how important that is, because it's bigger than just personal planning. We're talking about the livelihood of our business community. Personal planning is so critical to being prepared as well. We're going to talk about community responses, the public support for your business, and your business support for the community. One of the things that we aim to be a goal for this webinar is to help you start your plan and to share guidance on how to improve on your existing plan, and to include personal planning tips, to include business specific tips and resources to help you with that preparation, and to talk about the community response in a way that makes the most sense for your individual situation. But first, let's talk about a real life story. Pinellas County Emergency Management is not only a resource for us here locally, they are a resource for the state, and oftentimes they're resources for even outside of the state of Florida. So during Hurricane Michael in 2018, we're going to share what happened and how our emergency management team assisted the Panhandle. So after Hurricane Michael in the Panhandle, many teams from Pinellas went to assist and respond to Mexico Beach. And I would like to bring to you Joe, who is our Response and Recovery Operations Manager. And I learned this today. Joe is the Operations and Recovery Manager during the blue skies. So when the skies are blue, we want him to help manage the process. But during gray skies, we consider Joe the Chief Operations Manager. So we like to keep him in his managing things. We don't want to have to call on the chief, but if we do, it's good to know that we do have a chief who's well informed and has much experience in responding to recovery. So Joe, what did you find when you went to Bay County?
Thank you again, Dr. Johnson. We were deployed to Bay County to help out our colleagues up there in their EOC. And we arrived just as the winds were coming in from Michael. And of course, we all saw what happened as Michael passed overhead and the devastation that it was. And ironically, I was just with our partners from Bay County at the Governor's Hurricane Conference and talking with them. It's just been coming up on 4 years past Michael, and there's been a lot of successes, but there's still a lot of recovery going on in Bay County from that devastation. We all saw what happened at Mexico Beach. But inland, the cities of Panama City, Lynn Haven, Spring Hill, Parker, they were heavily damaged as well too. It was a bit of an older community, so they had many homes built before 1998 when the development code changed. So some of those homes and businesses sustained damage from the wind. So that's something, the message I want to get out, that yes, where the heart of the hurricane makes landfall, that storm surge and wind combination is deadly and devastating, and Mexico Beach took the brunt of that, and a lot of damages to infrastructure and the homes and residents there. But inland, we could see this in Pinellas as you get off the Barrier Islands. That's what they're there for, to protect us. There's going to be many commercial buildings damaged. So being prepared for that. So what we saw with Michael was many commercial buildings destroyed, loss of power, water service for weeks. Communications and mobility around the county was near impossible. At least for the first few days, everybody was pretty much at a standstill and very limited movement. It was a very heavy pine tree community up there, urban forest area, and they were quite large and had to be cut out of the way across the roads. So limited travel in and out of the county, giving the information out to the people, very difficult. There was no communications for 3 solid days until they were able to get some things in. But we saw, even when they repaired the communications, it would go down with other damage and fixing other things. So, and difficulty, for residents to find out, which businesses were open, because even, days after the storm, people needed to replenish their supplies and things like that. And it was difficult for businesses to do that. It was difficult for residents. So I put the last bullet there on communications, because the time to prepare for communications is now. Found that out greatly during Michael, that if you hadn't made a plan for what to do when there is no communications, it was too late for that. And I'm talking about with businesses, with your employees and with your suppliers. How are you going to communicate? And just being able to get around yourself to assess your damages at home and your residents is very important. So what was it like for businesses? Debris blocked the roads, and the county had to shut off access for days until there was safe travel. Like, as I mentioned, the electrical power and water service were knocked out, communications were knocked out. Business owners' first challenge was dealing with their home damage, and then getting into town or where their business was and assessing that as well too. That if there was damage to their businesses, the building debris was in their way to help clean it out, and with little or no help to clean it out. Contacting employees who were handling their own devastating home damages was very difficult. They had their own transportation challenges as well. And certainly business owners, employees needed time to comprehend what had happened as well too. You have to think about that as well, the psychology of such a traumatic event. So you have to care for the injured and the traumatized, and it is a traumatic experience, something as big as that. So, going forward, as you start to get to recovery, you had to have plans with your employees and how they would get to you and get to work, because many of them want to return and they want to help out. So having a plan with them is very important. But it was just the devastation that you saw was true. None of that was made up. And I think the most important lesson learned is having those plans in place ahead of time, contracts in place ahead of time, and just being prepared from a planning perspective will carry you a long way as you work through the damages, at home and at work.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Joe. One of the things that you talked about was being prepared and the importance of communication. I do international business disaster recovery assistance for the International Economic Development Council. And you hit on something that was key that oftentimes we don't put into our plan, and that's the mental health of those involved, our employees, as well as our business owners, as well as our responders and our technical assistance providers. When Pinellas County Emergency Management went to assist, I know we didn't go along. We took our Public Works Department, we took some of our law enforcement, and we took our Utilities Department. This is a group effort to work in emergency management and to respond to an incident. I know Pinellas County has Alert Pinellas, and Joe will share with you a little bit later on how you can sign up for that and how do you sign up for that, because we want to make sure that our business and our residents are prepared for an incident. So as we continue this discussion on preparedness and recovery, it is important that the overarching principle that we continuously build a resilient community in the Tampa Bay region. What happened in Mexico Beach and Bay County has a very familiar landscape as we have here in Pinellas County. And we want to create a resilient community by being prepared. That's why conversations like these are so critical. We're hoping that you take information you hear today and share it with your colleagues, share it with your business partners, share it with your neighbors. We want our community to be prepared. So I'd like to introduce to you again, Brian. And Brian is the disaster recovery coordinator with the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council. So Brian, what can we do to make our community, the entire Tampa Bay region, more resilient? And what initiatives are on the way that you all are doing at the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council to help with preparedness and recovery for businesses in Pinellas County?
Hello. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So when it comes to communities can become more resilient by practicing good disaster planning techniques in advance of disaster. So being innovative on the front side, being forward thinking about things they can do to harden their businesses, their homes, things of that nature, brainstorming in advance. By building new and retrofitting old infrastructure to higher standards that will be better to able to deal with disasters. So higher standards of building and infrastructure is going to be critical whenever possible in retrofitting the old. Resiliency ultimately means backing up your critical data and information, having alternative arrangements to conduct business. So I mean, just recently we had the phenomenon of working at home. And so now that's easier than ever, but it wasn't always the case. So where can you go to easily pick up the pieces and conduct business? You can't afford to not be open. So with today's digital world, the internet and electricity, that should be a critical thought that your operation has on how can you conduct business. And if you don't have the type of business that is based on the internet, then that's fine. When it comes to your brick and mortars or whatever it is you do, where can you go to quickly resume operations? So if your brick and mortar sustains a major loss from hurricane damage, winds, or floodwater, are you able to conduct your business in the parking lot of that establishment for some period of time because you made advance arrangements with the landlord and he advised that would be okay in a disaster situation? So being forward thinking when it comes to conducting business, that's just an example. And when it comes to new initiatives for resiliency taking place in the area, there are quite a few throughout the area, and I'd love to touch on them. Green infrastructure is being implemented quite a bit now. It's becoming pretty popular. Some of the components of this green infrastructure are designed to absorb water to reduce impacts to flooding. So not only can it look aesthetically nice, it can have a function, a purpose to basically help with water. That's just in one aspect of innovation. When it comes to the planning side of things, Resilient Tampa Bay Transportation. That is a endeavor that took place recently, but that's a vulnerability analysis that the TBRPC and I believe Hillsborough County worked together to create. The vulnerability analysis identifies ways to develop future transportation while considering hazard mitigation to minimize extreme weather effects. So the long-term planning when it comes to our infrastructure and our roads is starting to become forward-thinking in regards to what we'd be faced with in the future. So challenges and how can we be better off. So we're laying the groundwork today for a brighter future down the road. In 2020, Pinellas County created a sustainability and resiliency report. I believe it was kind of the first of the kind for the area. So lots of good things to come from that particular endeavor. At the TBRPC, we created a project, which we'll talk about in depth in a little bit, but it's called Project Phoenix 2.0. This is part 2 of something that happened in 2010. And basically what Project Phoenix is a plausible worst case disaster scenario of a direct hit on Tampa Bay. The purpose of that is to show the entire population, businesses, homeowners, of what an actual disaster will look like if we're faced with it. The big picture is to wake you up. So that exists. It's fantastic. It's an eye-opener. So that's critical. In 2018, the TBRPC created something called the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition, which is comprised of 29 local governments and private sector members to address future challenges due to extreme weather and climate change. So we are here created the initiative to get the governments in the same room to address concerns that we're all going to be faced with soon. So collaboration is what's taking place with that initiative, and that's relatively new. So that's moving forward. And that coalition, they're currently developing a regional resiliency action plan. What that does, it coordinates regional hazard mitigations and will be an action plan for local governments to follow as a resource. So giving them a roadmap on how we can be more resilient from a long-term planning perspective. So those are the initiatives that are going on in our area. And to further continue on that, when it comes to what we can do when it comes to our businesses or our homes, our entities, whatever we're doing, to be more resilient on our local level, working to weatherize and harden our businesses in advance is paramount. So FEMA estimates for every dollar saved or invested when it comes to prepare, $6 can be saved when it's time to recover. So basically, when it comes to your operation, starting at the grassroots level to begin to prepare in advance is going to be really important. And then when it comes to your community initiatives and the Tampa Bay Regional Resiliency Coalition, we can always use new members and participation and citizen input to make a bigger and better future when it comes to being resilient. So your voices are important just as much as anyone else that's in those discussions. When it comes to resiliency, what that really boils down to is how quickly can you bounce back from a situation? So it's your ability to recover following a disaster. How quickly can a business bounce back and get their doors open while becoming better prepared for the future? So resiliency is a major focus in our state right now, and it's going to go a long ways for helping us become better and recover. We will see some examples of that in the Project Phoenix video that will be played later, but please pay attention because there's really excellent stories to take away. How can we do that? How can we be more resilient? I talked about just some things you can do at the grassroots level, backing up your data in advance, your computer systems, just little things that you would typically take for granted for doing. Find alternative arrangements for your business. Where can you go to conduct business? Do you have any special agreements in place with your suppliers or your maybe some of the professional services that you typically use? Do they have special arrangements for you in advance, given a disaster situation that you can kind of fall on them? So the sky's the limit when it comes to business. And So we'll see in the video at the end, but one story that's really interesting is it's called Killer Seafood. And what they did was basically pivot. This business was almost wiped out, and they had to figure out what to do or go out of business, pick one or the other. So their actual business was completely destroyed, and they had to reconduct business on the exact same parcel of land where their physical building was. They worked out of a food truck. They were able to feed their community and build back. So they reinvented themselves to deal with the situation that was going to have a long-term impact. So there's ways to reinvent yourself. So be flexible and forward-thinking with your operations. And how can a business prepare for the worst? Hopefully we don't have to, but we're going to all have to adapt to the situation. Be innovative, be ready to pivot, reinvent your business if you have to do it. And if you have to do it, think about it before you get to that point. So contingency plans and business continuity plans, it's kind of the focus there. So it's never too early to begin to prepare. States and counties have tons of resources available on their website for your disposal. One that I'm sure will be touched on is disaster.biz or floridadisaster.biz, where if you've never had a business continuity plan before, you don't have the time, you don't have the money, this is a free resource developed shortly after Hurricane Irma in response, where you can, within about 20 minutes, by filling out the interactive inputs on that website, it will generate you a tailored business continuity plan and get you a lot further along than you may have ever been. So please at least explore that option. Every year, go through and understand your insurance coverages and make contact with your rep. Maybe your rep forgot who you are. Don't let that happen. Hopefully they're proactive, but if they're not, you need to be. Know your flood and evacuation zones for your businesses and homes. Cross-train your staff well in advance of a disaster so your business can function with key staff missing. So that's huge if you can get everyone basically familiar with the operation so they can pinch hit at any given point in time. That would be paramount. And when it comes to your local response and mitigation efforts, it's important to remember that following a disaster, the first 72 is on you, which means you got 3 days where you need to be self-reliant on your own operations to make sure you can deal with your own situation. Ultimately, state and local government and possibly federal will show up, but there's going to be a lot of people in line. So you are going to be dealing with that issue on your own. When it comes to CRS ratings, I think that's neat to talk about briefly. The community service rating system is what your local governments can do they can participate in this program. And by doing so and doing a good job, they're able to ensure that your area will have access to the National Flood Insurance Program, guaranteeing that you have access to flood insurance as a business or a home. And the better that your government does, the more proactive they are, the greater discounts you on the consumer level will see. So that's big picture stuff.
So Brian, you bring up an excellent point with that CRS as we move to the next topic. But with the CRS efforts, could you put a contact for our viewers, our participants, to be able to go and see where they lie on the CRS into the chat so that they can see it?
I will.
Okay.
I believe I'll put that in there. I believe that's Lisa Foster with Pinellas County, and she's incredible. Okay. I will do that. And then lastly, when it comes to insurance, I won't get into that too much, but something you hear every year is when dealing with insurance claims and contractors, hire licensed, reputable contractors. And you've all heard that a million times. You've seen it on billboards. You've heard it too much, but I want you to take away 5 red flags. If you find the 5 red flags anywhere in this contractor world when dealing with contractors and recovery, walk away. That's my advice. And so those 5 red flags when dealing with contractors are a poor reputation, no reputation, a history of chasing payments, asking for 100% payment up front, or the lowest bidder. If any of your contractors fall into those categories, walk away.
All right. Thank you, Brian, so much. We appreciate that rich information that you have shared. And like I said, we're going to provide all of the participants a hurricane response disaster guide at the end of this presentation. Many of you have seen them because we have put them in our chambers, in our business partner communities, in our courthouse, in our public facilities, but we want you to be as prepared as possible. So Brian shared a little more detail about what does the role of business play into this. And so taking into account all of the things that he has shared and what we heard about what happened after Hurricane Michael, we want to make sure that all of you are being very intentional in your preparation. What I took away from that discussion was, one, advanced preparation, doing it and to be prepared and doing it in advance is going to be key to your ability to recover. And then two, that higher standards have been put in place by Pinellas County to ensure that our community is resilient and is sustainable. We have an emergency management ecosystem that is filled with partners to help us prepare, recover, and be resilient. So with that, we're going to learn a little bit more about the different communities of Pinellas County and how they recover. Because in Pinellas County, hotels, motels, and other accommodations can often play a key role in post-disaster recovery. So to learn more about how that is and how do we interface with our beach communities and how it impacts our tourism community, I'd like to introduce to you all again, Mr. Steve Hayes, who's the CEO and president of Visit St. Petersburg. So Clearwater, St. Pete Clearwater. I forgot to put the Clearwater on there, Steve. I have my Clearwater partner saying, hey, you left out half the name, Cynthia. But Steve is the president and CEO of Visit St. Pete Clearwater. And we want to ask you, Steve, now, what role does your team play in preparing and for the endurance for recovery should we have a storm here in Pinellas County?
Well, the role we play, I think, is critical because tourism is a huge economic generator for this county. In fact, in 2021, in direct spending by visitors here, it's $5.5 billion, 14.8 million visitors over the course of the year to our community. And our role, I really look at it as it's kind of twofold. One is we're communicating with with current and future visitors that are looking at potentially coming here. And then we're also communicating with our hospitality businesses. And really, if you look at the scenario of, we were actually talking about this the other day with our different marketing agencies, but what happens if we have a direct hit versus what happens if we have a glancing hit, or what happens if it happens someplace else. And, the example with Michael, I was in Pensacola at the time, and we were like the place for evacuations for Panama City and Mexico Beach in that area. They all came west, and that's where the housing was. And so all of a sudden now we had housing that fielded not only FEMA workers, residents, of those communities, in addition to our own population. Again, we got to help see what's out there. And I think one of those critical roles is to find out from lodging what is available. So to kind of put it into perspective, there's roughly about 42,000 units in Pinellas County. That covers hotels, but also vacation rentals. And with an average party size of 2.7 people, that's 113,000 people that could be here if you're 100% occupied. And that's usually not the case, but if it was over 4th of July, that would be the case. Is communicating to them, where they need to go, how can we help them? And then this other side of that is those rooms now become available, and especially inland, somebody wants to evacuate to there. And I think that's critical as well. So it's kind of managing that inventory. So we're actually on the phone pre-event as well as post-event to find out what that availability is, because that's going to be critical for a variety of different reasons, especially when, Joe is calling up and saying, I've got, 5 bus loads of FEMA workers and we need to, and we need to find additional lodging for them, or power crews, or first responders. I mean, think of the different audiences. The other side of that is those hotels have got to pivot. And what I mean by pivot, if they've got a bunch of workers in there, they're not selling a bottle of wine, they're selling a 6-pack of beer. And so, the audience changes, the types of business that transacted all change. And so, also to guide them through that process. The other element to all this is looking at from the lodging side, and some lodging providers may not know this, but FEMA actually has an assistance program where if I am a survivor, I'm an evacuee, and I can relocate to a hotel, that FEMA will actually pay for that, especially under certain circumstances. And so, but the only way you can get recommended is to be on the list, and to be on the list, you actually have to go and register your property. So again, it's important to know, to go through and know that information. But I think the other aspect of it is on the communication side. Now, you talked about Alert Pinellas, but we actually take the information we get from Emergency Operations Center. And if they say the sun is going to be out on Tuesday, but it's going to be windy, we will communicate that to the visitor. Conversely, if it's going to be 20-foot swells and rainy, we're going to communicate that, because the more they know, the more beneficial it is for them in determining what they need to go through and do. And so we run a site. It's vspc.info that literally, in fact, if you went there today, we still have red tide up. Now, and because that's where we're going to tell people to go, but this one would be hurricane related. And we'll at that point have accommodations that are available. And when you get to the accommodations, again, what's available? Do they take pets? Do they have smoking? Do they have, will there be certain things that are open? So they're, again, from some of the amenity aspect. But I think the communication and the same consistent communication across all entities, I think is critical, so that no one's confused, especially in this time when everything's very fluid, until both not only pre-storm but also post-storm.
Thank you so much, Steve. I love to make word clouds, especially when I'm doing a presentation and start to think about all of those key words that keep coming out that can help us be prepared. And you said a few words that I just want to reiterate. And one was, of course, communication, how important that is pre and post storm, and the consistency in the messaging. In Pinellas County Economic Development, as part of our business response to what the status of the business is, we take our information, just like you, directly from my emergency management office, command center, to be able to share that same information out directly. Then that way we can be consistent in the messaging. The other thing I wanted to just hit on, Steve, you talked about direct and indirect, whether we were hit directly or indirectly, and important how the tourism industry is part of our economic ecosystem here. And so we have to get the message out to the rest of the world. If it wasn't a direct hit and we're open for business, we depend heavily on the CDB to help with that communication. So you and your team play a critical role in making sure that our community stays resilient and is sustained. So next, I'd like to really talk about every resident, every business, every visitor, every person in our community needs to know about the 2022 hurricane season that's quickly approaching. So for this part of the discussion, I'm going to go back to my friend Joe, and I'm going to ask Joe to talk to us a little bit about when you put on your EOC chief hat. You know, it's gray skies, and now you got to be the chief, and you have to help guide us through what we need to know to make sure that our operations are properly in place. So, Joe, could you share a little bit with us?
Absolutely. Thank you again. I'm always happy to hear when us presenters are cross-pollinating these preparedness concepts, because they really do, and they're organic. There are three important pieces that we ask every resident and business to do, and that's to know your risk, make a plan, and stay informed. And one of the most important things is knowing your risk. And as a business owner, you need to know how to plan for your risks, your employers and your business, right? And businesses have their own unique vulnerabilities, lots of windows, business equipment, supplies, and electrical dependencies. But one of the first things we ask is to know your zone. And there have been some changes this year to the evacuation zones. Every 5 years, the National Hurricane Center runs their SLOSH model again, their storm surge modeling. And our time was up in 2020. So during 2021, we received that data and we prepared our analysis and redid some of the evacuation zones. And about 48,000 parcels changed, affecting about 96,000 households, so residents. So we prepared storm.pinellascounty.org to explain the process and to show some of the changes. We have a nice side-by-side map where you can look at your old evacuation zone and see your new zone. And here's a nice example of it right here. The new map is on the right, and you can see for this canal, Fingerlets community, there's a lot more storm surge. They went from a B to an A. So we did see, mainly things from a C to a B, which is a higher risk, right? So A is the highest risk, then B, C, D, and E. We saw some E's to D's and things like that. So you can look at that with this nice slide viewer we created in storm.pinellascounty.org. So we did send postcards to everybody that did sustain a change directly. And then we're putting out the information where you can get your new evacuation zone information. And we do put it on utility bills for all unincorporated partners. City of St. Pete does the same thing. You can look it up at your property appraiser record as well, too, for your parcel. Right there, it shows it. The evac zone, you can't see me moving the mouse. And then you can also call, if you have a landline, 727-453-3150. And again, stormpinellascounty.org, and that's where our Know Your Zone application is linked to as well. But that's knowyourzone.pinellascounty.org as well. But, knowing your risk, so you know your evacuation zone, know whether you're in a flood zone, two different things. So you could be vulnerable to rain events with a lot of flooding as well. Again, high winds with all those windows for your businesses. Power outages can affect the business greatly, and water service disruptions. People think of that, the inconvenience of that, but for a business, you lose your fire suppression, you use your water service. If you need ice, and if you go into a boil water notice, that ice that you have in there is good, but then the ice that comes out later, needs to be removed out. So, those are the considerations if you're a business or restaurant, cafe, and those things. Of course, we have, the occasional tornadic event here in Pinellas, and expect the unexpected when it comes to knowing your risks, right? So just take that evaluation, understand what those could be, because then your next part is to make the plan, right? You just want to make your plans for those, and every business should have two types of plans. And that is a COOP plan, continuity operations plan, and Dr. Johnson and her team can help you with that. And then you should have a hurricane plan. What's the difference? A COOP plan is during blue skies, a pipe breaks. There's a lot of resources available to you, other places to go to. During a hurricane, not so much. A hurricane is a regional event, a countywide event. Those things that you thought were available for your COOP plan might not be available during a hurricane. So having two distinct plans for that. And one thing I want to touch on is important for businesses is we order an evacuation with a start and end time. And that's very critical. And this happened on the Barrier Islands with one of our businesses. People depend on your businesses. We want you to stay open as long as possible. But yes, that evacuation end time is for everybody. Everybody should be getting to their safe place by that end evacuation time, because we're anticipating conditions to deteriorate quickly after that, right? Those tropical storms force winds are hours away by that evacuation end time. But we want businesses to stay open because there was a gas station on one Barrier Island that was the fleet gas station for a particular city, and they closed right away because they wanted to go and be prepared, be good stewards, and they did. And but the city hadn't topped off their tanks and they hadn't gotten prepared. And luckily they knew who to call and get that opened up. So they got a pump opened up for them so they could continue getting gas. And of course, people need food and water and batteries and those type of things. So yes, businesses, we want you to stay open, but we know you need to close at some point so that you can get to your safe place. Your employees can get to your safe place, especially with all that traffic out there. So it's a balancing act. Just try to do your best, but take care of yourselves, family first. Definitely closed a little before that evacuation end time and get to your safe place, okay, and do your preparations. And you may have to, what we do at work, if you imagine us at Emergency Management, we're working the storm 24/7 as it approaches. We have to send folks home, and it takes them 4 to 8 hours sometimes, to get ready for their homes, their families' homes, their parents' homes. So we allow them enough time that they're gone, somebody fills in for them, and then we rotate through. So we play that balancing act as well, too. So start and end time to evacuations, COOP plan, and a hurricane plan. So you know your risk, you make that plan. That plan includes hurricane kits, and we have some of that coming up in the slides. Take those necessary cautions, securing your building, covering your equipment and furniture. And one thing that we would ask, too, is the evacuation order is for everybody in the evacuation order, pets, as well as every person in that evacuation order. So that means businesses too. No, you cannot leave employees behind in your warehouse. It seems sturdy. It's for everybody to evacuate. There's no sense leaving human life behind. The storm surge is the worst part, and that's what we're evacuating to, just to stand guard or watch over. There's nothing they can do during the high winds anyways. It's a bad saying, but that's what insurance is for, right? Get them out, get your employees out. Move your stuff up as best as you can, cover your envelope or your bill. Those are the things you can do to protect your inventory than leaving someone behind. It doesn't work. There's nothing they can do during the heat of the storm. One of the other things, too, is if you are in a non-evacuation zone, you do have a secure facility or home, is to invite folks into your homes. People don't like to ask for help, and some people have pets and they're afraid to go to someone else's house if they have a pet. They want that the animals might not get along, but we all know how to put pets in a room and shut the door, or even in the garage, in different rooms, and keep them separate. It's just for those few days as the storm passes overhead that the folks need that protection. So consider that too. If you're in a safe home in a non-evacuation zone, to invite those family, friends, employees in that you could take in. So you're making your plan, you're covering your windows, covering your doors, protecting your fleet of equipment and cars. For businesses, it's called the loss opportunity. If you have one printer at your shop that you print, that's what you do. That's your lifeblood. Print your checks or something unique that you can't work without that. Protecting that piece of equipment is important. Some of the other things might not be, but it's that loss opportunity by not making sure you have the right protections or pre-thought of how you're going to protect that equipment, whatever it may be, a front-end loader or a printer, just taking that into consideration. If that's your livelihood, you don't want to lose that piece of equipment. That's called loss opportunity afterwards. So having a plan for all those things that could befall your business, understanding your risk, okay? And then again, staying informed for yourself and your business. Use only trusted sources of information. And in Pinellas County, we have what's called Alert Pinellas. You can sign up for that, and it's geo-targeted messaging. So you can put up to 5 locations in, maybe your business, your home, your children's schools. And if there's something in there that we're messaging, we can draw a little polygon in there and send specific messaging to folks there, whatever may be happening there. And if needed, we can do what's called an all call as well, too. So stay informed with Alert Pinellas, Ready Pinellas, Twitter, and local media. Why local media? Well, if Sarasota County and the storms coming up out of the south, the storms are going to arrive in Sarasota County before Pinellas. So you don't want to hear what's happening in Sarasota County for Pinellas. You want to hear what's happening in Pinellas from our Pinellas local news channels, our National Hurricane Center, and from Tampa Bay National Weather Service. And we help get that information out. So trust Pinellas County Emergency Management. Another thing, too, that folks staying informed is which shelters reopen. Not all shelters open at all events. So we have, over 30 shelters, but we don't open them for every event. So paying attention which ones are opening. And then if you have contracts already and your supply contractors, you should contact them ahead of time to make sure that they understand that, you're having an event, you may be needing to call on them. You want to get your supplies in as early as possible, or there could be issues with that. Because there was a good topic brought up with Dr. Johnson was, let's say it's a Miami storm and all that. If the indirect consequences of that storm could be supply chain interruption. So while it's great that a storm's not happening here in Pinellas, as a business owner, you need to pay attention to where the disastrous event is occurring to see if that's going to affect your supply chain and make adjustments as necessary. So while it's great that a storm's not coming here, some of those considerations for a business is, well, is that where I get my fuel from? Is that where I get my supplies from? Is that where I get my raw materials from? Am I going to be disrupted, and how am I going to handle that? And that goes back to having a coup plan. So get involved. And then go back to that slide. I'm sorry, Jess, the one with the documents. You need to have a document kit. And this is a lessons learned from Michael. The deeds and titles, but you need to have your lease agreement as well, too. Your fleet vehicle registrations, because if they sustain damages, and your maintenance records for your fleet vehicles as well. Yeah, you could need that for your insurance information. And then previous building permits. There were many homes and businesses damaged. And, over the years, you put some new fascia on and different things, and you layer it over the previous work. Well, some insurance companies are going, well, that wasn't permitted, or that was permitted. So having previous permits and things like that are very important to show that was good work that was on top of this work. So yes, it could get into that mess with some of that. So, but having that, knowing that ahead of time can prepare you for that. So previous building permits, lease agreements, contacts, 4-year agreements, your insurance policies, and IDs as well, too. I think that's very important in your kit besides a personal to-go kit. And the last thing I'll leave you with is, is getting involved. You can get involved with community emergency response teams, CERT teams, VOADs, those volunteer organizations active in disaster. That's really great. Church groups, or here at the county, you can join our Volunteers in Pinellas program as well. And you can actually work in the OC if you get vetted through that process. Post-impact for a major storm, we do open up a volunteer reception center. So those unaffiliated with the volunteer agency, we can connect you if you want to get involved. So just keep that in mind. You can do that ahead of time or right after the storm too. And then we ask everybody to pledge to plan. We have a Pledge to Plan campaign. You can go to our site or click these QR codes here that's up on the screen. It stresses the importance of planning. We're challenging you to make a pledge to start a plan, or at least review and update your existing plan. So join us in being prepared, and that's all we ask. None of this is anything to be afraid of. It's just everything to be prepared for.
Oh, thank you so much, Joe. I tell you, as we prepare for resiliency, so that should we have an incident, our business community, our residents, and our citizens are able to recover as quickly as possible. And we're able to continue to be strong and be resilient and be successful. The business resiliency component of that is really, honing in on our ability for a business to act quickly. And I heard that you and Brian, both shared some great nuggets about how can you pivot? How can you react quickly? Because that's really going to depend whether your business is able to be sustainable. And I want to reiterate one point you said, Joe. It's two separate plans. A COOP plan is different than a hurricane plan. So we need to be prepared for both. And so it's very important that we do that. And so as we prepare for the recovery, to make sure that our staff, our customers, our assets, and our employees are safe and we're able to get back to business, we want to make sure that we safeguard all of these tools. And for the state of Florida, there is what we call a business assessment tool. So if we have an incident, and it could be red tide or it could be a storm, but there's an incident that happens and there's an emergency declared in the county of Pinellas. Our business owners have to complete what's called a damage assessment tool. And that damage assessment is critical to helping us receive FEMA dollars and state dollars to assist us with the recovery. So you can go to Pinellas County Economic Development's website at pced.org/damage, and you will find this damage assessment. We ask all businesses to fill out that damage assessment. It's hypotheticals. No, we don't know the exact amount, but what it does, it gives us an indicator on how to get assistance to the community quickly. And then I just wanted to hone in on a couple of those bullet points that you see before you. And I cannot reiterate enough the importance of understanding your supply chain. We all are experiencing some of the issues that occur with the supply chain in our current everyday life right now as a result of COVID and some other incidents happening in the world that have impacted our supply chain. And interruption into the supply chain could wipe you out of business if you're not ready for it. So knowing who's in your supply chain and know what your supply chain's continuity plan is. As a business owner, it is absolutely your right to ask the question of your suppliers, what's your contingency plan? I need to know what you're going to do if something happens so that I know that my customer base and my staff and my business is secured by using that supplier, if you will. So have those critical conversations in the preparation stage so that you can stay resilient and you're able to recover and be successful. In the last 20 years, we've had about 10 storm events, 4 of them hurricanes, 6 tropical storms, and each one of them have left a lesson for all of us to learn from. And that lesson really hones down to how well are we prepared to respond to an incident? How well are we prepared as a community? And I have got to take a pause and commend everyone who's on this website today and watching this webinar, that you have taken the time to invest in your business, to invest in your families by finding out how do you be prepared so that you can be resilient. So what we want to do is move right along and talk about some of the other items. And you could go to the next slide, please. This slide is just a slide of resources, many of which have been stated and all of which will be shared at the end of this presentation. So I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but I do want to bring a little special attention to the Florida Small Business Development Center that's located at Pinellas County Economic Development. As a business owner and a resident of Pinellas County, you have the good pleasure of having the highest performing SBDC in the entire region right here at your fingertips. And we have 2 business continuity professionals who will help you with that business continuity plan, who will help you do a cost assessment, who will help you calculate what cost savings you may have through your mitigation plan. So we encourage you to reach out and get this no cost assistance that is provided by Pinellas County through our Economic Development Department by contacting pce.org, and you will see those resources there. So we encourage you to use the resources that we are sharing with you today. These resources are really going to be critical into how we're able to recover quickly. You know, how quick are we able to come back? And Brian gave an excellent tip earlier. It said 72, you're on your own. So, you know, think about that. What does that really look like when you add the cost to it? You know, set 3 days of running the business. What is that going to cost you? 3 days of no employees. What does that look like? How do you sustain your business with knowing that you may have to deal with that kind of situation? All of that will be written out into your business continuity plan. In your COOP plan. And so we want to make sure that you have the tools so that you don't have to go, oh, I wish I would have. Now we're telling you, you need to have a business resource toolkit where you have all of this information at your fingertips in both an electronic format and in a hard copy format. Next, we're going to talk to Brian. Brian is going to share with us this very unique opportunity that we have had here in Pinellas County in Tampa Bay region. We work with this project. It's called Project Phoenix, and how this tool can be used to help each of you prepare for an incident. It's a hypothetical, but it's something to really make you think. Let all of us stop and think, how will we be resilient if we should have a storm of the magnitude that Brian is going to share with you in Project Phoenix? So Brian, could you tell us a little bit about what could we expect to see when we watch the video clip of Project Phoenix?
Yes, please. So Project Phoenix is a plausible. So that means it's actually possible. It's a worst case disaster simulation of a direct hit Category 5 storm on the Tampa Bay region. It makes we'll see in a minute. It makes landfall, I believe, in Indian Rocks Beach and then cuts through our area. So it certainly is possible, and it would be our worst case scenario. We haven't seen that here in possibly ever, but for a long time. So it paints a picture of what it could be. In the 2020 version that got released, and it just won an award at the Governor's Hurricane Conference, we look at real businesses and people that experienced the Category 5 direct hit from Hurricane Michael in Mexico Beach in 2018. So they actually had the Category 5 roll in. That's a smaller area, but they had an intense storm. So we went to Mexico Beach after we did our simulation to hear their stories and see their community and try to get a feel for what it would be like here. Ultimately to make our story here more real. The video series includes a series of stories and interviews of small business owners impacted by the disaster and what steps they took to recover and be resilient and bounce back. The project also involved creating a Train the Trainer webinar that discussed the simulation and recovery strategy practices from the business community and local leaders around Tampa Bay. So this is more than just a video. It's certainly a video, but there was a training component to it where we got the emergency managers in the room from 6 different counties. And I looked at the critical infrastructure in our area and tried to see what the recovery would look like. This was a revamp after the initial Hurricane Phoenix project we did in 2010, where we calculated pretty much the loss and the damage and the cost to a major storm. Project Phoenix is a shareable resource made possible by the EDA and can be found on tbrpc.org, which is our website, or on YouTube. I mean, it's easy to share, and it's a phenomenal resource. Hurricane season just started, or is about to start, June 1st, rather. This is something that I think every business should at least watch once.
Yeah.
So,
and and Brian, I had the good pleasure of participating in 2010, and I participated again in 2020. And I tell you, the realistic emotions that I felt watching this, it really made me think, rethink some of my own personal planning, as well as how we educate our businesses on being prepared. So I just want everyone to know that this was not done in a vacuum. It wasn't just emergency management professionals. We had community stakeholders. We had actual business owners. We brought everyone to the table to really create the scenario in its most real fashion as possible, so that we, really address that complacency that is kind of out there in the community, because we have been very fortunate to not have a direct hit. But as we do it every hurricane season, we want to remain prepared and ready to respond. Thank you all for coming today. We're going to have an official wrap up right after this video, but please join us in watching Project Phoenix 2.0. I think is it 2.0, Brian?
2.0.
Yeah, Project Phoenix 2.0, a live scenario of what would happen if a Cat 5 hit the Tampa Bay region. Thank you.
There has been a noticeable shift in the forecast track.
Forecasters say this storm could be one of the strongest ever to hit the Tampa Bay region.
Phoenix is now a Category 5 hurricane. It is a historic storm and unfortunately making a beeline right now for our area.
Oh my goodness.
And we have Category 1 Hurricane Phoenix just south of Jamaica now. Phoenix is currently expected to make landfall in the Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 2 storm, but of course, always, we are keeping a close eye on this system.
There has been a noticeable shift in the forecast track from the NHC overnight, which now brings Phoenix into our viewing area, possibly as a strong hurricane. Now is the time to begin those preparations, folks.
We have breaking news this morning if you're just joining us. The National Hurricane Center has upgraded our entire viewing area to a hurricane warning, as Hurricane Phoenix is projected to make landfall as a major hurricane sometime tomorrow. Mandatory evacuations are in effect for all coastal regions. Forecasters say this storm could be one of the strongest ever to hit the Tampa Bay region.
We cannot stress enough how crucial it is that you finish your storm preparations tonight. Conditions will deteriorate rapidly tomorrow morning, and evacuation routes will quickly become impassable. Please don't take this lightly and heed all evacuation orders.
Folks, this is unfortunately the worst case scenario unfolding for the Tampa Bay area. Phoenix is now a Category 5 hurricane with maximum sustained winds at 160 miles an hour. The wind gusts up to 200 miles per hour. This is catastrophic. It is a historic storm and unfortunately making a beeline right now for our area.
We have a live look right now at North Tampa and Polk Street. I believe this is near Kawa Coffee, and as you can see, the storm surge has completely inundated downtown.
Law enforcement now is reporting that all bridges have been cut off by storm surge. We're looking at up to 20 feet of storm surge in some spots.
We're trapped on the third floor of the Tampa General Hospital parking garage, and the storm surge is up to the second floor of the hospital.
St. Petersburg is essentially an island right now.
A viewer from Brooksville is reporting roofs being torn off of businesses there. So this is a very important reminder that this is not just a coastal storm. We are seeing significant wind damage well inland.
Unbelievable gusts coming through. Oh my goodness.
The damage this morning is unimaginable. The beaches are essentially gone.
The Howard Franklin Bridge is completely destroyed. I've never seen anything like this.
Officials are scrambling to clean up debris from local airports in order for supplies to be flown in. We are getting reports from Homosassa of residents trapped by downed trees.
There's not a single business that we've driven by that doesn't have significant damage.
Tampa General Hospital has told us that they are unable to receive any patients after the hospital suffered significant damage from wind and storm surge. The level of destruction out here is indescribable. It's going to be a very long road to recovery for the Tampa Bay area.
That was some terrifying moments to ride that storm out. I mean, this storm took our family business. It took both of my sons' homes. It took 75% of our community and destroyed all of the structures. No other city experienced anything like ours as far as devastation. It was a terrible, terrible sight. Remember, my home and all the landmarks that I'm accustomed to referring people to, Miss Sue's house with the blue roof, John's house with the birdhouse, they were all gone. There were no landmarks. I mean, this is our livelihood. This is how we make a living. This is what we do every day. We come to work. And Michael's got it strode all over the ground, and so there were some. I mean, those are tough feelings when you're in your 70s to see that. You've worked all your life for that. I was crying on other people's shoulders just like they were crying on mine. I had some emotional issues that I just had to sort out. And I just had to sort of regroup. I had to pull back and I mean, when I say I withdrew, I did. I went literally either in my truck or in my bedroom or I had to gather my thoughts before I could even approach anybody. And I mean, even my sons. I mean, they were devastated. But the majority of the mom and pop business people, to me, they're the salt of the community. They're the backbone of a community. The people of this town are remarkable. We helped hunt for pictures or baby shoes or anything that people were trying to find. It just gave us a sense of togetherness that was sort of gave me some peace. Yeah, we lost a lot of things, but the best thing we can do is get busy, focus on putting our business back together, and that's exactly what we did. They gathered what they could, stored that away, and started making plans to get back to work.
I was prepared for a hurricane, but I wasn't prepared for all this. I wasn't prepared for my city to be devastated. I wasn't prepared to come home to a town that was flattened. And it reminded me of things I had seen on television with a bomb explosion or a tidal wave. It was unbelievable. I mean, my heart just sank because this was our little spot in paradise. I worked my way to the canal here where I kept my boat, and the canal was so full of debris, you could barely see that there was water in the canal. Off to my right, there were two boats sitting up on the hill here in the road. And there was another boat behind us that was pushed all the way almost to Highway 98. We were helping as much as we could until the day I got a phone call from the boatyard saying, "You've got to come move your boat." And my question was, where am I going to put it? Fortunately for us, Captain Anderson's pier in Panama City Beach, they had a spot, and I was able to move my boat over there, park it, and we could start making repairs to my charter boat. So as a small business owner, I had to turn to the Small Business Administration, some of FEMA, those type of things to go, "Hey guys, I need help." So basically we had enough money to pay for a place to park our boat. Our insurance helped us with repairs, and we just kind of sat there and worked on helping the community, at the same time doing what we could to get our business at least to where it was floating. Through some blessings of a couple of my sponsors, we were able to purchase the boat behind us. And one of the main reasons we bought it is we could get out of town. I could put it on a trailer and haul it north. I believe that this is where the good in people really comes through. And the support that we got along with our community was overwhelming.
In Mexico Beach, every restaurant suffered either catastrophic or major damage, and coming back for us has been tough. It was a harsh reality. I didn't really venture out far from the house, maybe a 2-block radius that afternoon, but got up bright and early the next morning and walked the mile down to the restaurant site and found basically a pile of what was the townhomes across the street laying where our restaurant used to be. Very few items left from our restaurant on our site. They were half-mile inland from here. I wound up buying the concession trailer and having it built on my own. Unfortunately, my father passed away a couple of years ago, and I think this is where he meant for me to spend the money that he left me to get back into business. We went down and set up a little organization called Camp Happy Tummies, and we fed 1,500 meals a day for the next 6.5 weeks or so to the people of Mexico Beach, the first responders, the survivors, the volunteers, all that. You know, I'd get there before daylight and there back home after dark with a generator powering the one lamp in my refrigerator at home. And, you know, it was a great feeling to know that we were doing what little bit we could to help people in town, because there really wasn't a whole lot going on in that direction at that time. One pizza place did not come back. Sharon's Cafe, Toucan's, the big bar and restaurant on the beach, completely gone. We never, ever had a competition-based restaurant atmosphere in this town. Every single restaurateur to a man was there to help every other one. If you ran out of something, I got it, come get it. I don't want a person in town eating with me every meal, every week, all week long. You know, they need to go out and see the other people. If they like us enough to come back once or twice, bonus. But you know, the thing is, you need to come to a town and experience more than just one place. Every morning at 11, when we turn the open sign on, and you see there's a line of people outside the trailer, it's like, wow, that's great. It really is. It touches me, man. It really does.
When your time comes and you draw the short straw on a Category 5 storm, you need to be gone. You're going to be exposed to considerable damage or loss. Don't let that entrepreneurial spirit be a casualty of the hurricane.
My advice to every small business owner is have all your business documents somewhere that you can take with you. Have an exit plan of what you're going to do, how you're going to shut your business down to go through the storm.
Anyone in business, whether you're doing a restaurant, vacation rentals, or the boat charter captains, you have to find a way to be creative to do that. Kevin's doing sunset cruises instead of charter fishing things. If you're willing to adapt and learn that, you know, post-disaster rules are different than they were before, you can make it. You know, everybody's resilient in their own way, but you gotta be willing to adapt and change.
You can download a loan document from the Small Business Administration now and have it so that when it's time, you fill it out and send it in. Make sure you've got plenty of insurance. Make sure you don't skimp on it. You've got to replace your business. You want to be covered.
Nobody who lives in the Gulf is going to be 100% safe from it at any time, ever. But if you have insurance, make sure your home is resilient in all the hurricane preparedness ways. Now I have hurricane windows as well as hurricane shutters. I have all the proper tie downs in my attic.
My youngest son, the owner of the business, he found some people to patch the roof. There was about 5 panels missing. All the big roll-up doors were blown out. Lee took the initiative to just frame those doors in, take an old door that we had in the warehouse and just put it in there like a storefront. We just were creative and innovative and found a way to take what we had, patch it up, and make the best of it.
1 year out, there was a lot of hope. It was a great celebration. Everybody got together and recognized, held hands, broke bread together, had drinks together. There was probably 3,000 people at this little get together. So that was very heartwarming. And I think there's plenty of hope for everybody post disaster.
Our regrowth has come further than I thought it would. We're just a small spot on the map. Our hearts are big. We're back up and we're fighting strong.
Thank you for sharing that. I tell you, Brian, whenever I have the opportunity to see that video, it still brings out such emotion for me to know that, our fellow Floridians had to experience that. But I am so grateful that we have partners across this state who are willing to share those best practices so that should any of our other communities have the misfortune of having an incident hit their community, that we at least have some tools to respond. So with that, and I looked into the chat and I see that the majority of the questions that have been posed have been put into the chat for you all to see. And that we also have put some various links, the links to Phoenix, the Project Phoenix 2.0, the link to that video is there, as well as resources to the Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council and Pinellas County Economic Development, as well as the Pinellas County Emergency Management Department. At this time, I just want to do a last check with my presenters on this panel today to first of all, thank you. Thank you for taking the time and not finding it robbery to give up your time today to share this vital information with our citizens, our business owners, and our residents here in Pinellas County. And together we hope and we trust that we can be prepared so that our community can stand strong and we can be resilient and we can be sustainable through any incident, any storm that may come our way. We know that we cannot do this alone, and we want to make sure that you, as Pinellas County residents, citizens, and business owners, know that your Pinellas County partners, be it our law enforcement, our Board of County Commission, our 24 wonderful municipalities, and our unincorporated community partners. We are all here to help you and to sustain you should we have an incident in our community. So as we prepare for the 2022 hurricane season, please utilize these resources. And we thank you all so much for showing up today. And we trust that you have a safe and prosperous rest of 22. And please get ready for hurricane season so that we can be ready and don't have to get ready. Take care. Thank you.